Coming up this weekend at lightweight, we have the former Ultimate Fighter season GSP versus Koscheck runner-up, Michael, the 36-year-old, the Menace, Johnson. Matt, we had this conversation last week, but when does a man, like Dennis became a man? He was a menace when he was a boy, but now he's a man. They probably just call him Dennis, insert last name. When do you get rid of a nickname like the Menace?
I don't think Menace is age-specific at all.
The Menace.
I couldn't disagree more with that, if I'm being honest.
It's a weak nickname. He's going to be taking
You call NBA players who are good defensively a menace?
Yeah, but that's different. Their nickname's not the Menace.
My whole thing is Menace doesn't really have an age restriction. I'm kind of surprised you're going after this nickname of all of them.
It's a weak nickname, but Michael Johnson's had some not-so-weak fights in the UFC. Fight of the Year contenders. His fight against Justin Gaethje was an absolute barn burner in Gaethje's UFC debut. And when you look at this, I mean, for Michael Johnson, another opportunity to get another win. His last time out, he looked amazing against Alan Patrick. The hand speed was there. The movement on the feet was there. And that's what Henry Hoof was calling for in the corner. But Michael Johnson really was moving well on his feet. He had the power. He had the 1-2. It looked like the Michael Johnson of old in that fight against Patrick, who's a tricky, weird fighter. And the best part about it for Johnson was, even on those weird entries from Alan Patrick with those long takedown attempts, Johnson was able to sprawl, circle out, get back into open space, and continue with his game. And when you look at Johnson highlights, that 1-2 is the biggest part of his game. But man, this guy is a lot of fun to watch when he's on.
He is, but it's been years since he's been on against like a good fighter at the UFC level, and that's why I'm really curious about this matchup. Like, beating Alan Patrick is a good way to end a losing streak, but it's not enough for me to think, wow, this guy is the fighter that he used to be. Now, beating someone like Jamie Mullarkey will at least get me a little bit more convinced that you've become the guy who you used to be. But now Michael Johnson's just somebody that I used to know. Like, even that Alan Patrick win, Alan Patrick has not looked good in a very long time himself, so for Michael Johnson, he's going to need more than just a decent level of takedown defense against a guy who he has a massive wrestling advantage over, and I think how he deals with the pressure of Jamie Mullarkey in this fight is really going to be able to tell us how the second and the third round is going to look, because for Mullarkey, he fights in almost a completely opposite way of Alan Patrick. Patrick's very long, he's very wild from the outside, he will lunge in on a lot of his shots, whereas Mullarkey will get into range and then get very wild once he is on the inside of your range, and that's why I do think Jamie Mullarkey offers a lot of different questions to the Michael Johnson answer than a guy like even Alan Patrick, because what I do really like about Jamie Mullarkey is that, yes, he has a weird chin, like some guys can stop him very early, sometimes he can take a lot of punishment later on into fights, but he is willing to take a shot to give a shot at this stage of his career, and for Michael Johnson, yes, in the last fight he wasn't as hesitant, but that's been something that really has plagued him post Justin Gaethje fight. He'll get into these firefights, and then he'll start to just sort of, I don't know, give up a lead, if you will. Even against Darren Elkins, like, he's getting out-wrestled, he's getting out-thought in that matchup. And for Johnson, I really do think it's a matter of just kind of centering himself. I know that sounds like a Jared Cannonier Crystal's answer, but for Johnson, he did get up in the ranks very fast. He knocked out Dustin Poirier, beat Tony Ferguson, beat Edson Barbosa. Then he fought Khabib, which was supposed to be like, hey, Michael Johnson, you think you're hot right now? If you can beat Khabib, you might be one of the best ever. He took a lot of damage in that fight, and that's something that's always kind of stuck with me with Michael Johnson. You look at his record, 20-17. It's not like he's fought bad fighters for those losses, and they all happened really tough fights. So I do worry about his durability at this stage of his career after so many wild fights.
From 2015 to 2022, if you had to guess what Michael Johnson's record is, unless you knew what it was, it's 4-9. And you look at the losses. Beneil Dariush, you brought it up. Nate Diaz, Khabib, Justin Gaethje. And also his last loss was to Clay Guida. Like, it really has been a big down spell. You look at the last win before the win over Alan Patrick. It was in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, against Artem Lobov in a co-main event that was too close than it should have been. But
he beat him pretty sound.
You look at it for Johnson, obviously good defensive wrestling. Hand speed has always been kind of a hallmark of his game. Good power. For Jamie Mullarkey, got into a firefight against Jalen Turner's last time out, and he ended up losing that fight. That fight was about 4 months ago. Before that, big wins over Devontae Smith. Sent him out of the UFC. Finished Kama Worthy very quick in their fight. Losses to Brad Riddell in his debut and Fares Ziam. But again, you look at it for Jamie Mullarkey. Good leg kick. Good 1-2. And then it's like somebody activates like some switch. and he just becomes this absolute crazy person that, like you said, willing to give one to take one. He took a ton of damage in that first round against Jalen Turner, and then in the second round, he ends up getting finished. But for Mullarkey, the fundamentals are there. The size is there for this division because, again, Michael Johnson's one of those guys that's played around at 145 pounds. But again, even some of those recent losses, Guida, Stevie Ray, it's a little tricky that way. This is an interesting fight nonetheless. When you look at the odds, I was surprised how far apart they were. I thought they'd be a little bit closer just with the name value of Michael Johnson. But you look at it, Johnson open a minus 150 favorite, and the line automatically adjusted. Plus 195, the underdog. Jamie Mullarkey open plus 130, minus 235 right now. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised to us as they are to you. Michael Johnson, will he be favored? No, he will not. 518 total votes, 64% Mullarkey. You got 26% by decision, 66% by knockout for the 36% that have Michael Johnson to win, 29% by decision, 63% by knockout. So a lot of people think that we're going to get a knockout in this fight.
And I would agree with them. I think this is a very tough fight for Michael Johnson stylistically, and this is why. Johnson's really good at taking advantage of guys who, like I said with Alain Patrick, they jump into range. When you jump into range, you normally get carried out on a stretcher. That's the boxing term. Alain Patrick was jumping in and lunging in a lot, which allowed Michael Johnson to set up his counter shots off of the back foot. The difference is Mullarkey gets on the inside and plants his feet on the inside. That's going to be very difficult for Michael Johnson to get full extension on his punches. And go back, even think about all the great Michael Johnson highlights he has in his life. What are they all based off of? It's that long right hand and a looping left hand behind it or a straight left hand behind it. Those are shots that he normally lands at what you'd call like kicking range or the maximum boxing range. I think Mullarkey's going to do a really good job at crowding the space in this fight. I think that's going to be the key. It's like when you have a great power hitter who's playing baseball. You don't want to throw the ball outside where they get full extension on it. If you go inside, they can't really get a full swing off on the ball. I think Jamie Mullarkey's going to have a baseball mindset. Get on the inside of Michael Johnson because Johnson's not the type of guy at this stage of his career is really going to go for a lot of offensive takedowns. He really does use his wrestling primarily as a defensive tool at this stage of his career. So if Mullarkey gets on the inside, I really do think he can do some good damage to the body and to the head of Johnson.
When you look at Jamie Mullarkey, that's a big hallmark. You might think, okay, he sees red, he goes into this rage, but he does like to paw that jab. He will scoop some hooks into the body, and once he works that, the hands start to go down, and he can start working back up at the head again. For Michael Johnson, the last time he got finished was in a fight where he was having tons of success until he wasn't against Josh Emmett.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
An interesting one there some years ago, but both of us in this matchup going with Australia's own Jamie Mullarkey to get the win. Let us know down below if you got Michael Johnson, who's back in the win column in his last fight, or if you're going to go with the man out of Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia, in Mullarkey. Some big time interesting matchups on the rest of this card. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.